What's going on, everyone? Steven here from TechMaker.tv. In this episode, we're going to start setting up some analytics for our blogging application. I believe this is actually part 11 in this series. So if you want to follow along with that from scratch, you can do that over on www.techmaker.tv. Also, we have spent the past couple of episodes in this series looking at a gem called Impressionist and looking at how we can write some queries that essentially give us some stats. So we're just going to be using those queries in this episode. So if you want to see how that works, be sure to check out those episodes. Today we're basically going to focus on using those queries in a library called Chart.js to actually set up a little analytics dashboard for our authors. And I'm going to show you as well an alternative if you want to get into more advanced type analytics. But anyway, with all of that said, if you like this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we're publishing content every day. Also, if this video is helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up because that helps us out a ton. All of that said, let's go ahead and jump into writing some code. To get going, let's just jump over into the terminal, and the first thing I want to do is add chart.js to my project. And I'm going to use yarn here, so I'm going to say yarn add chart.js, and this should take just a second, so I'm going to let this run. Once that finishes, I'm going to go ahead and open up the code here, and let me go ahead and close all the defaults, and I'm going to go ahead and open up application.js, and we'll come down here and let's basically do what we did for tricks, and we'll say const chart equals require chart.js. And I want to be sure this thing is loaded. So just inside of my TurboLinks load, I am going to console.log, and we'll say chart, and I'm going to space that out like that, and then I'm just going to say chart. And this is essentially going to tell me if that object is actually loaded. So I'm going to open up my developer tools here, and I actually need to run my server again. Once that fires up, we'll head back over to the browser and just refresh the page, and let's see if chart is defined. I always like to do little sanity checks, as you will see as we go through. I don't ever like to get surprised way after trying to implement something, so I want to make sure I've got what I need. So it looks like we have a function chart, and that's what we expect to see. Looks like we have some other problems going wrong with our sortable, but we'll deal with that in a future episode. Okay, so I'm done with the developer tools, and we can go to /posts, and it's going to prompt me to log in here. Let me type the password correctly. Okay, so we don't actually have any navigation for authors right now. We just have a /post that you can navigate to. And I think what I'm going to do here is say /stats and make this a thing. So let's actually go over to our terminal, and I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to say Rails G controller stats, and I'm going to give it an index, I suppose. I don't know if that's the best or not, but we're going to start there. And let's go back over and just double check all of our routes here. And so we have this scope module authors, and I'm actually going to bump this all the way down in there so that that is nested. And I don't want this to be /index there. I want to say get stats, and I want to point to stats. Where is it? Index. Looking for the pound sign and can't find it for some reason. It's late. Okay, so let's go over to our browser again and just refresh. Uninitialized constant authors stats controller, and that is because back over here we need to open up our stats controller, and we need to put module authors, and then at the bottom make sure we end that, and then we'll fix the indentation, and then I'm going to make this authors controller here so that it gets the same security that we have in our other controller, our post controller, and then I'm going to drag this file into authors. So we have post controller, and we have stats controller, and we have elements controller in here now. And remember, the authors controller is essentially authenticating the author and then using the author's layout. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so now let's go back and refresh. And now I need to I need to also drag the stats folder inside of authors here because that's now nested. So now we have index and we should be up and running. Okay, so let's pop back over into the code really quick, and I don't need that open. I will need that in a second. I shouldn't need the routes anymore, and I don't need, well, yes, I will need application.js in a minute. Really quick, I want to look at the posts index in the authors area and just quickly scan. So I have an H4. I'm actually going to copy this for a second, and then we're going to open up stats index here. And I'm going to just replace all of that with this H4. I don't need any of this, and I don't need that, and I'm just going to say stats here. Now what I want to do is underneath this, I'm going to create a row, and this isn't going to be super beautiful to start with, and we may iterate on it, but I want to kind of just rough something in. So I'm going to say div col6, let's make that md6, and we'll make 2 of those. Actually, I'm going to paste the whole thing at the end, so we don't need to do that twice. And then inside of here, I'm going to create a card, and then I'm going to make a card header. And let's say here, last 7, let's say 7-day views. And then under this, let's put a card body. And then I'm going to copy this whole thing. And then I'm going to say 7-day unique views. Something like that. And let's refresh. Okay, I didn't do something right. I have a row. I don't have an in. Okay, I need to put the card outside. Put that there. And now let's check it out. Still not. What is going on? I need another, sorry, I need another col md6. There we go. Okay, cool. So now we have our areas where we're going to drop our 2 charts. Now to actually hook this up, let's go over to the Chart.js docs, and let's look at line. Well, let's do usage, I guess, to start. So you can see here there's a canvas with an ID and a width and so on and so forth, and then we follow along with that. Let's see, let me open up in a new tab, actually, the line chart here. So line chart is new line chart CTX. So you can see what's happening in here. They're setting a CTX based on an element ID. And then over here, they're passing that CTX to a new chart object and telling it what sort of line or what sort of chart it needs to be. They're giving it some data and some options. So I want to basically get this hooked up exactly as is, and let's work off of that from there. And so one thing just to point out, I'm kind of saying this as I go all the time, but what I always like to encourage people to do is sanity checks. So like for example, like they actually have a whole example here. So I want to just copy and paste some stuff and make sure that this actually works. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it inside of my first card body like that. And then next I'm going to grab all of the rest of this, and I don't need a script tag. Just want to make sure I did not grab that. Okay, so let's copy that, and then let's pop back over into application.js. And right here, I'm just going to paste this. Now this is going to look awful, and frankly, I'm just not going to worry about it right now. I'm going to leave it alone. Let's go refresh and just see what happens. Let's make sure that we actually get a chart loading onto the screen. Okay, cool. So we do actually have the library hooked up, and we're charting some data. And that looks pretty nice. So let's go ahead and back this out. So we don't actually want to have a bar chart here. We want to have a line chart. And for the moment, I'm going to get rid of all of the options and so on and so forth here. So I'm going to get rid of all of that. Don't really know exactly what the border width applies to, but I'm going to leave it, and I'm going to get rid of the options, and I'm going to indent all this stuff properly. Maybe. Let me see here. And let's get that. Let's see, how can I make that right? Okay, these all need to get indented in, and we should be good to go. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is, now that I have a chart, what I want to do is change, well, first of all, let's go see what this looks like. We haven't even checked that out yet. This should be kind of a gray line chart or something like that. Okay, cool. So we'll fix all the coloring and stuff a little bit later. What I'm going to start by doing is going back to my, what was it called, page view class. So we have this for date range, right? And then we have a count by date, and we have a unique count by date. That's actually what we want. And I'm going to grab my stats controller and move that here. So what I want to do is say at count by date equals page view dot count by date, and let's pass in, let's see, what I want to do actually is for date range, and then we'll do 7.days ago, and then we'll do like time.now, something like that. Let's do date.today instead, I think. Let's see what this looks like. I think that's right. Can we do a 7 days ago is gonna, let me actually check something in the Rails console here. Sorry, I'm kind of like mumbling my way through this right now, but I just want to make sure I'm doing it right. Dot beginning of day. Okay, so that works. Okay, so that's what I wanted to see. All right, so back to our controller. So we've got count by date is page view for date range count by date. And then over here, we want to do the exact same thing, but we want to make that unique. So we're going to say unique count by date is that, and then we're going to do unique, which I kind of used the unique spelling from Ruby there. I think. Okay, cool. So we got that. Now what I want to do is come over here, and I don't need that open, on my canvas. So what you'll notice is in application.js, we're getting this CTX, which we're doing document get element by ID. So we're actually already loading this element. And what I want to do is add some data attributes to this. So what I'm going to do is say data, let's just say data set. Well, that's going to be a little bit weird. Data.pageViews equals, and then I'm going to just basically print out the at page views. What do we call that variable? Count by date. Count by date. Let me go refresh that and see what happens, because I suspect that's not going to print out how I want right here. Let me inspect this. So we have here, I think I need to actually make that to JSON right there on both of those. So we're going to say .to JSON and then .to JSON. And then what I want to do is, inside of my application.js, I'm going to put a debugger right here. And let's go back and try this out, and it should kick us into a debugger whenever it loads so that we can play around with the CTX. So we have the CTX. Let's check out what that is. So you can see there that we have the data page view, so we can say ctx.dataset, and we can do .page views, and we get this string here. So what we can do is say JSON parse this thing, and now we get essentially an object which has let me think about this for a second. So we may not actually want this in this format. So what we're getting here is dates as a key and then numbers as a value. But the way that Chart.js expects this, if we look here with labels and then data, is what we're getting is we want to have the labels in an array and then the data in an array. So let's make this a little bit easier on ourselves and fix that on the controller side. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the best thing to do might be this. So instead of going ahead and converting this to JSON, what we could do is over on our, I got to think if this is going to work the way that I think, but what we could say is data labels is count by date dot keys, and then we could say data, which you'll see why I'm calling it that in just a second, is at count by date dot values. Sorry, I'm just fixing my syntax highlighting on here. Okay, so now we still have our debugger. Let's go check this out. So let's see if this does what I'm thinking here. So let's do our CTX again. So it looks like we have data labels and data. So we can do ctx.dataset.labels. We should be able to do json.parse and then copy this. And now we get an array. So that's pretty good. So what we should do is now copy this and go back over to our application.js. And in our labels, let's paste this. And then in our data, let's paste it again and change the labels to data. And now let's go refresh the page. Actually, let me get rid of the debugger. And hopefully that refreshes pretty quick and we should be able to see it working. Cool, so we've got our 717 and our 719. Let me open this up and click on a post. And let's go refresh. What's the date today? The 23rd. Why is that not picking up views from today? That is weird. I'm not sure what's going on with that. We'll get to that in a second. That's more of a query problem. Right now we're more focused on the graph problem. It looks like it's only going from 5 to 6, and we have, if we're going back 7 days and we have zeros, we would actually like there to be zeros. At any rate, let's go ahead and get the other chart set up, and let's deal with the other problems in a second. So I'm going to change this from my chart to 7, let's just say page views, and then I'm going to make the exact same thing down here. I didn't mean to click that. Paste this here, and I'm going to change this to be unique page views, and we're going to change this to be a unique count by date keys, and same thing here. And let's go refresh and see what we've got. Nothing, and that is because I did not change this. So we'll say page views And let's actually need to get rid of that label as well. Then we'll say unique right here. Don't want this number of we don't want the number of votes. That's just something on their side. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And let's see where we stand now. Hopefully we get 2 charts. So yeah, basically what we're getting is 1 and 1 for the uniques, and then 6 and 5 for the other. And I guess I need to actually include some kind of label. So that's the actual chart label, I guess. So we'll call that page views, and then we'll call this one, what is that? Data sets label unique page views, something like that. So the next thing I want to do, okay, I broke something. What did I do? No comma. The next thing I want to do is fix those zeros. So I think I'm going to work on that a little bit off camera to kind of figure out the best strategy for that. We may use view components actually. I'm becoming a big fan of that, and I'm trying to use them everywhere that makes sense. And I think this may be a place that makes sense. So we will check that out, but that might be what we do. But anyway, this episode is getting a little bit long, or longer than I wanted to do tonight, so I'm going to have to cut this into parts and make a part 2 tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll do a part 2, and we'll fix the zeros, we'll fix the coloring here, and I gotta see, there may be something going wrong with the query or something, because when I refresh over here, I'm not actually getting any new stats. So I would like to be getting some stats there. So, and I'm wondering, is that even happening in the terminal over here? So I don't even see, I don't know. I'll have to insert into impressions. We are inserting into the impressions. Anyway, I'll investigate this off camera. I don't want to get completely sidetracked by that, but we'll do an episode tomorrow where we wrap this up. We'll add colors. We'll add zeros in here, so if we have days with zeros, that those days still show up. And then we'll try to make sure that we fix our query, whatever's going wrong there, if there's something going wrong there. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this. I know this is only like a partial episode, so stay tuned for the rest of it tomorrow, and we'll get this wrapped up. But I will talk to you then. Thanks for watching.